Greetings and welcome back to another perspective. Today we are going to have another look at the Netherlands. Now last time I had my friend on who is from the administrative division or province of Limburg. And Limburg is of course a very different area to the area where my current guest is from, Cataline. Let me first thank my guest for joining me. He is, I think, politically also different from my previous guest. Would you say that you're alt-right, or your tendency is the alt-right?
No, I'm not alt-right. I'm more of a classical liberal type of guy.
Okay, yeah. But I think in any event, I'm pretty sure he's much more interested in politics, with all due respect to my friend. So I think this should be an interesting conversation. And we might get a really good overview of what's changed, because he's actually from North Holland, where there are a lot more urban centers, it's more populated, and I think it should be an interesting conversation. So once again, thank you for being here. I guess the best way to start is to maybe talk about all the political parties. One of the reasons why we're having this conversation, of course, is because the Dutch elections will be coming up quite soon. So maybe an overview of the Dutch parties for our listeners would be really helpful.
Yeah, I think that we have the traditional parties, and they are based on the pillarization. I don't know if you are familiar with this concept.
Sorry, can you?
Pillarization. Pillarization of our society basically means that in the 20th century we had four pillars.
Pillars. Yes. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had the socialists, so they are connected to the Labour Party, which is the P van Gogh. And we had the liberals, who are connected to the conservative Liberal Party, which is the VVD. Then who are currently ruling together in the government. Then you had the Catholics and the Protestants, both separate pillars. And our society was pretty much really really segregated. So when you were a socialist, you wouldn't go to a bakery owned by a liberal or a Protestant. You would go to a socialistic bakery, and this went through all of society. So churches, all the things, sporting, like soccer clubs. You had the Protestant soccer clubs. You had liberal soccer clubs. So basically, we were very segregated, and the political parties were based upon these pillars. So the Christians actually merged together and became the Christian Democrats, the CDA. And basically these three parties divided power through the 20th century.
Now, the PVV, Partij voor de Vrijheid, recently, I guess in the last maybe 5 years, it's really gained a lot of momentum, and more people are paying attention to it. In fact, I might argue that Geert Wilders is probably the most popular Dutch politician outside of the Netherlands. So what do you think accounts for that? What explains that?
Well, I don't know if you're familiar with Pim Fortuyn. Have you ever heard about this?
No.
Okay, so basically in 2001 we had, he's a Marxist professor, and he wrote a book about Islamization of our...
Oh, right, he was killed. My mistake.
He was assassinated in 2003, I believe.
Yes, I remember.
2002. So he was a Marxist professor, and because we had a really political correct culture in the 90s, and he just broke through that, and a lot of people actually, he said what most people thought, but they thought they couldn't say it. So he gained a lot of popularity within within a year, and the traditional parties started to demonize him. So he was a Nazi and all the stuff, like he was Islamophobic. We all know about this, how they do this, his tactics. Eventually, this led to his assassination. So he was assassinated by Theo van Gogh, and he was actually an animal rights activist, because Pim Fortuyn also had some issues with animal rights, about fur and stuff. So we actually killed him because of this, and this was the first political assassination. Well, I think that the last one was actually our founding father, Willem van Oranje, in our independence war. So he was actually murdered, and I believe a few weeks before the elections, and actually a lot of people voted for his party because of this. The party, I believe they ruled, but because of internal strife, it basically just faded away. Then you got Geert Wilders, who was a member of parliament of the conservative liberal party, so the VVD. And he basically split off his party. He became a one-member parliamentarian, and he started his Partij voor de Vrijheid, so the Party for Freedom, in 2004, I believe. We also had Theo van Gogh. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, of course. I was going to actually ask about Van Gogh. He was murdered after his film. He collaborated with, what's her name?
Ayana Siali.
Right, Ayana Siali. And there was a controversy around her, too.
Yeah, she basically was a member of the Labour Party. She immigrated, I believe, in the 90s to Holland. She's a very bright woman. She finished a political science degree on the University of Amsterdam, and she just started to say all these things about Islam, which, I mean, just as Pim Fortuyn, people didn't like it, like the mainstream opinion hegemony of the left wing media and stuff, you know. So they just basically demonized her as well, and eventually this legacy just went from the Labour Party to the Conservative Liberal Party, and eventually she basically got exiled from the Netherlands and went to the USA. This was in 2006, I believe.
Yeah. Do you think the murder of Theo van Gogh helped to motivate Geert Wilders and really pushing his agenda?
Well, of course, you know, this was all around. Of course, we had 9/11, we had the Iraq War, all these things were going, and the conflict between the West and Islam, if you want to call it this, really started to. I mean, the 90s were, of course, like peaceful time, the end of history. The Soviet Union had collapsed, and we all thought that we were doing economically great. We were moving to a one European state, you know, and basically this shook up everybody out of his sleep, you know. So basically, this is why he gained traction, I guess.
It's interesting you mentioned that. I mean, I'm significantly, well, not significantly, I'm, you know, over a decade older than you, and I think the 90s, if you look back on it, were just an incredibly peaceful, kind of almost utopic. There was just, everyone thought that the model of society we had in the 90s, whether it was in Europe or the United States, but I think particularly in Europe, would continue forever, and for a long time. And there's no irony, I guess, to 9/11. I mean, whatever you think of it, there's a sort of symbolism there that everything did change. The demographics of Europe have changed. So I remember traveling in Europe in the 80s, and it doesn't look anything like that anymore. I mean, the safety's not there anymore. The Muslims are everywhere, and I imagine that it's, you know, I don't know. It's funny because I don't know. Sometimes I just don't know what to really call myself. So I'm American. I'm both European and American. I grew up in the States, but I also 20 years in Europe. I'm Hungarian. You know, I have kind of a dual identity. But it seems that Europeans that have just spent their entire lives in Europe, they don't even have that awareness that things used to be different, and I would argue better. What do you think about that?
Well, of course, I'm born in '86, so yeah, I'm very interested in all these things. So maybe this is why I'm more aware. And also, the parallel is that the 90s was for me. It was my childhood, and it was like a perfect. You know, the childhood is always like you're in a dream state. You know, you're naive about the world. And when all this happened, I mean, also I got in my personal life, like my parents got divorced, and I became a juvenile delinquent. I started hanging out with the wrong type of people, smoking marijuana, all this stuff. You know, so yeah, basically, if I look at my personal life and if I look at the world, it's basically it's kind of the first decade of the new millennium, kind of chaotic.
Yeah.
Saying the least.
Yeah. Of course, at that age, most people aren't paying attention to massive political and social and national trends. I mean, when you're a teenager and a young person, you're very much concerned with yourself. You don't really think about the external world nearly as much, or at least that's the tendency. But we fast forward, into the 2000s, the things that happened to Van Gogh and the rise of the PVV. I guess it probably would be best just to fast forward now. I mean, essentially what's been happening in the Netherlands is, from an outsider perspective, it's been a few years since I've been there, but is that there's just been a gradual buildup of immigration, of crime, of Islamification, and it really is recently that people have begun talking about it. I mean, for years now, it seems like Geert Wilders was the only one to talk about it, at least in the mainstream. But now it's becoming really popular, and I noticed, we exchanged comments on that comment section on the video of air compressors.
Yeah, the alt-right conference. Yes.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember. I'm getting old here. I think you said something to the effect of, you're not. You said you're not alt-right, but I guess there are people who are feeling a bit, forced or sort of squeezed into a position now, because the traditional parties are not willing to take responsibility or at least openly discuss some of these issues that everyday Dutch people feel very concerned with.
Yeah, I have to agree, and I think that the Netherlands kind of has a special place, because I think that we are ahead of most European countries, especially Germany, because of Pim Fortuyn and all these Geert Wilders and Theo van Gogh and Ayaan. We have been talking about this for the last 15 years, and I used to be a left-wing anarchistic social justice warrior, So, and I've just seen everybody change. I grew up with Muslim friends, and I've seen them change. They become very hostile towards me. I see people in my neighborhood. I see more beards, more hijabs. I see more jalebas, and they're not more people, but they just change. They've become more pious in a sense. Ever since the Islamic State has been reclaimed, as they would say it. So yeah, I cannot deny reality, So I would like to live in a multicultural bubble, but it's just not. I cannot deny reality. I see it all around me. I speak to my friends. They are Muslim, and I see them being radicalized. So yeah, I cannot.
These are people that you grew up with. You were friends with them. I guess when you're a kid, you played with them, you hung out with them. And now, did they even have a Muslim identity when you were growing up, or was it very weak, would you say?
Yeah, definitely. So a few of them are just let's take the intelligent ones. So, for instance, I have one friend. He's from Morocco, and I always thought that he was just a classic atheist. He just didn't want to offend his parents or something like that. And I've been having some conversations with him lately, which kind of shook me up, because he really believes this shit. He's been talking about me, like before. I was the only one who read the Quran. All my Muslim friends, nobody read the Quran. I was the only one. I was the non-Muslim, and I read the Quran. They didn't read the Quran. They all read the Quran. All this stuff. He was telling me that. I mean, he's a law student in the university, and he's telling me about Muhammad and an angel and how he took out his heart and all this crazy stuff. And I say, do you really believe this? He said, yeah, I believe this. He believes in the end of time. He believes that we are in the end of time right now because of ISIS. So I just cannot believe how an intelligent person like that just says things like that. It's really disturbing,
Maybe I don't know. I mean, I can't really understand religious. Well, I understand religious motivation, but I can't relate to it. I've never been religious myself in any way. But I think people. I mean, as much as I'm not happy to concede it or to admit it. It seems that people feel maybe that they lack some kind of identity. I mean, especially if you're a Moroccan guy, you're not really Dutch. You don't really look Dutch. you're a lot shorter than a typical Dutch person, right? I mean, I forgot what the average is. It's like 187 centimeters for men. I mean, there are all these things, and then you're sort of Dutch, but you're not Dutch, and I think this
this is important because they are also not Moroccans. So when they go to Morocco, they are Dutch. They say they are looked at as foreigners, and when they are in Holland, they are looked upon as foreigners. So they don't have an identity. The only identity they have is the Muslim identity.
Exactly.
So this is why they fall back to this.
And I think, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. That I think, if they don't have either identity, and it's not even clear to them what's going on. Maybe half the time they're just sort of, they feel lost, or they just have no way to identify themselves.
It's tribalism, and
oh yeah. See,
especially with the internet, they can relate to each other,
Yeah, and I think that's the thing about Islam in general, is this, everyone's a brother, right? So, you do something 10,000 kilometers away to somebody, right, and all of a sudden, the people 15,000 kilometers away get angry because, they're...
Well, exactly. So he's always getting worked up about Palestine and Israel, and I used to be like that as well, but I just, I kind of moved to the right, so I kind of leave that behind me. But when I'm discussing Palestine and Israel, I say, why are you not talking about Tibet, Yeah, they are Muslim. This thing. It's totally hypocritical.
Yeah, I mean, I get really bored with I don't, explain my position for a long time. But, I mean, people tend to obsess over that conflict. But yeah, I mean, obviously it's a bit hypocritical to focus on that. I think there are obvious reasons why people focus on it more than others, but and I think a lot of this is to do with just European culture in general. There wasn't this. Europe was a place that, I mean, you look at, say, like people like me and other European Americans. It was a place that people from Europe, they left to become Americans. Europe was never really a place, at least in recent years, I think, in a few centuries, where people left to become European. I mean, the populations were always pretty settled, and there was never this idea of a sort of European project the same way as with the United States. And I just, even in the United States, as alt-writers will point out, for much of that time it was just, basically northwestern Europeans. I mean, Eastern Europeans like myself were looked down upon, and things like that. So it's even in the United States, but still, there was still a background of some sense of, immigration. I think that's all very new. Last time I was in Amsterdam, I think it was 2011, and I compared that to the first time I was there in the 90s, and it looked different. Same with Germany, and I think people just, there's no cultural or political precedent for that in any sense. Nobody's ever said, Germany and the Netherlands are countries of immigrants. Whatever the propaganda behind that in the United States, that's what people at least claim. They claim that, right? So it's a strange thing. And even though maybe historically, originally, you have the northwestern white European person, it's not a completely ridiculous thing to say if you're from, say, I don't know, originally from Colombia, but second or third generation American, and you say you're American. I say I'm American even though I'm second generation, or first generation actually, and my father, anyway, from Hungary, but it's not a weird thing. Do you know what I mean? Whereas
I understand totally what you're coming from. But also, they are trying to sell us this image that we are an immigration country, and they always refer to the Hugenoten. I don't know, the Huguenots.
Huguenots, right?
So it's also, I believe, Nigel Farage has been accused of, your ancestors were Huguenots, so how can you be against immigration? Well, it's totally faulty comparison, because in Holland, I believe within 100 years, only 20,000 people immigrated from France and stuff. So, and this is what we take in a yearly basis. It's not even. It's a faulty comparison. So, this is basically our media. Our mainstream media, they are very focused on America, And they just try to sell this image. They just use the same talking points they use in America, like we are an immigrant country and all this stuff. But it's basically, if you look at the history, it's bullshit, you know. It's just nonsense.
Well, they did the same thing in the UK, right? I mean, in recent years, they're describing the United Kingdom as a nation of immigrants. And they'll talk about, I believe, the Huguenots as well.
Yeah, the Danes
in the
and
16th
stuff.
century, and we're talking about a long time ago, during some of the religious wars in France. And there's no background for that. And even if you wanted, let's say, just for the sake of argument, let's say you thought mass immigration were a good thing, there's no way in terms of infrastructure and just the social environment or political environment that Europe was prepared for this. And I think this is why it's just so bad in Europe compared to a place like the United States. Muslims in the United States, I've said this many times, tend to be somewhat better behaved. Now, there are exceptions, but and whereas in Europe, I think you see a lot more of this self-imposed segregation. And they, you know, it's very clear. If you're in a queue in the supermarket, or I was running errands before we were talking, I was in a queue. You know, you saw the women in hijab with their, you know, typical features. I don't know, they looked Arab, and you know, they're not talking to the Germans. They're just hanging out with each other, and it's well, I don't know. I mean.
Well, to be honest, I think that America has been lucky with the immigrants it receives. So
yeah. Well, there's that too. I mean, we're getting the shit immigrants here, aren't we? We're getting the.
Well, if I talk about with my Moroccan friend, he's from the Berber minority. So he's basically he's
not even Moroccan.
So he's telling me that the king of Morocco, the former king of Morocco, he had a lot of problems with these people because they always were revolting, and you know, they were up in the mountains, and they were just basically subversive. So when the Europeans came to this also goes for Turkey. When the Europeans came to Morocco and asked the king, can we get some guest workers? He just sent all of these people to Europe because then he doesn't have to care about them, you know. So he basically sent and in Turkey as well, all of the people in the east, you know, like the Western Turkish people are very, very modernized. I've been to Turkey a lot of times, to the west, and they are pretty Western, you know. You see girls with tattoos in their necks and stuff, you know. They are more Western than the Turks we have here because they're all from the east, from the mountains. So this is basically, and in America you get all these. Higher middle class people.
Yeah,
people
well educated, high IQ. I mean, it makes sense too. If you're from Western Turkey, let's say, or you know, Istanbul, you know, upper middle class. Well, I mean, there's no real reason to go to Germany or the Netherlands. But if you're from some shithole close to Iraq or something, then yeah, I mean, anything is better, I guess.
Yeah, they send the Kurdish minorities, they send the Alawite minorities. So yeah, they just send the minorities and the criminals. Basically what Trump is saying about Mexico, you know, that they send the rapists and the thieves, but I don't know if that's really correct.
On a personal level, though, I mean, you know, one of the themes at the Electoral conference was this sort of, at least partially, a notion of Dutch identity. I mean, you said you're not alt-right, but do you feel that you're being pushed into a sort of where you're forced to? I mean, this is what the alt-right likes to talk about, sort of, to choose a white Dutch identity. And I mean, you don't strike me.
I don't care about whiteness. I don't care about whiteness.
Okay.
I just like to. I watch this conference because I'm interested in politics, and I like to see all sides of the story. And I don't care about whiteness at all.
Okay. Yeah, but then again, I mean, the alt-right would accuse you of, you know, you're not in touch with your identity and blah 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 blah.
Yeah, well. I think it's nonsense. You know, we can talk about the IQs and stuff, but I don't think that because somebody has a lower IQ, you should treat them differently. You know, it's just if you have the right culture and if you just integrate and accept Dutch culture, and if you're black, I don't care. You know? I don't care. But
I mean, the thing is though, is that we see. I just had a conversation with a guy this morning that I am uploading about some of this. Is that identitarianism is the biggest political phenomenon of our time. And applies to Muslims, applies to different ethnic groups. This is the story, I think, for the foreseeable future. And I think it's why people that used to not have an identity, like your Moroccan or Berber friend, they'll latch onto something because it's there. Even I got to say, even with myself, and the more I think about it, maybe it's because I'm getting old, but I never really, when I was growing up, I just didn't really think of any sort of identity, and if I did, it was more as a New Yorker than anything else. And I got to say, as I get older, I'm much more interested in my Hungarian background, and probably want to live there for a while, sometime soon. And maybe that's just a sign of the times. I'm not sure, but it just seems that we went through a period where people felt basically nothing. They never thought about it at all. And then, like, okay, yeah, you were Dutch, I don't know, je spreekt de mooie Nederlands taal, but so what? Well, not a big deal. And all of a sudden, everyone is talking about identity, and it's being spearheaded a lot, I think, to a strong degree by Muslims. And although I don't think I could ever feel part of the alt-right for a wide variety of reasons, almost you feel a need, and I think you probably feel it too, to describe yourself as sort of Dutch. Whereas I had to really, in recent years, think about my own identity. Is that, I'd probably say I feel more European than I do American these days. And these are not questions I ever spent a lot of time grappling with even 5 years ago. And now they're just very present in my own mind. I think in many people's minds. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I have to agree. And of course, whiteness, of course. Dutch people are white,
Yeah.
And we've got black people, we've got people from Suriname and the Caribbean. So we've got 5 traditional multicultural groups. So we got and you can distinguish them in two different groups. So the colonial groups, so the ex-colonials, Indonesians, so from Moluccans. So they're mostly Christians because they fought for the Dutch colonial army, and when they get independence, they will get murdered by Suharto or Sukarno, I don't know, one of these two guys. So they basically had to move to Holland, and they in the beginning we had some problems. So we had some hijackings, some terrorists hijacked some trains. It was in the 70s, I believe, but overall, they are pretty well integrated. As for the Suriname people as well, and the Caribbean is not so much. But
crime, I've read some statistics. Yeah.
Exactly. And this is the gangster culture that we are talking about Islamization of our continent, but I would also stress the Afro-Americanization of our continent. So the hip hop culture. I was affected by this. I listened to Tupac. I thought I was a gangster when I was like 15 years old. Yeah. And this really affected my childhood because these were my role models, So I did some pretty bad things because I followed that role model, So I'm a white person, but when you're a minority, you identify even more with this struggle, with this gangster culture, me against the white society, and fighting like being a criminal, being a gangster. And this is what we see with a lot of Moroccan youth. So. I don't know if you watched the video from Sargon of Akkad. He made a video about why do bad Muslims commit terrorist acts.
I try not to watch too much Sargon, but no.
Okay, well, he was really on point. So basically, he made a point that these bad Muslims, so they are not Muslims, so they go to prostitutes, they smoke weed, they are criminals, and they commit these terroristic acts in some kind of redemption, to redeem themselves. So this is basically what I see around me. So they are all, I see, the other day this summer I was talking to a guy, a Bosnian Muslim, and he's basically a drug dealer. He's got tattoos all over his body. He drinks alcohol. He's an ISIS supporter. So I said, why are you so hypocritical? How can you be a drug dealer and an ISIS supporter? And he said, I only sell drugs to non-Muslims.
Right. Well, that's part of the Muslim creed, isn't it? It's that the kafir can be treated differently. A lot of people, this is just, Islam's kind of like a pseudo-ethnic identity, right? They, like I said, something happens to a Muslim 10,000 kilometers away, you get upset. And so you can do anything with the kafir. Lots of groups do this. Jews do this too. They treat the Gentiles differently because they're not part of their group. I I mean, that's understandable, but I think what's alarming is the numbers of people like this now, because it's always been that way. You know, these groups that treat other people differently because they're not part of the group. You're right, there's a redemptive aspect to that. I think the guy in Nice, the guy who drove that big truck into the people who killed him, he had a lot of mental issues and problems, and so I figured, I guess I'll go out with a bang, so I'll run over all these people.
Yeah, suicide by cops, something like that.
Yeah, pretty much. It's
well, Omar Martin, he's supposedly was gay, so.
Oh right, yeah.
When I go out as a jihadi, I can go to paradise, Even if I'm
yeah. I think we're in denial that say that has nothing to do with Islam. If you're looking for redemption or religion,
No, of course, it has to do with the whole martyrdom.
Yeah, and people feeling just not a part of the societies they're in. I'm not saying I'm pretty neutral on this. I mean, if I walk around and just look at everyday Germans, there's definitely things about Germans that make them German, like bureaucracy and having a stick up their ass. It's why I would never describe, despite living here for a long time, I never describe myself as being German. But
are you familiar with the Dutch German relations?
Yeah, well, actually, my friend that I had on, he's part German, and his classmates used to torture him because he was part German. He doesn't really like Dutch people because of that.
I think it's changing.
Yeah, no, I've done some research. It's definitely changing. But this is I always think is funny, Cataline, is that when the alt-right starts going on about white identity or Dutch identity, I always think, well, okay, so should Dutch people go back to hating Germans? Because for 4, 5, 6 decades, Dutch people hated Germans. But they don't really. I don't really think these people really spend a lot of time. Your normies, as they're called, they don't really spend a lot of time thinking about, what they are. And I think for them, this awakening, if you want to call it that, to even think about things like identity and where you fit in the world is going to come much, much later, because they're not even part of the discussion. For them, it's just business as usual, and things are just continuing along as they were in the 90s, sort of. They try to ignore it. But it's getting really hard. I have an acquaintance, a Dutch girl, I game with or used to game with sometimes, and she, it's weird. She's not very political. She's not, engaged. She's just she's a normie basically. But she definitely senses that the Netherlands has become a different place. And I've never really talked extensively about politics with her, but I get the impression maybe that she could vote for someone like Geert Wilders or someone looking to solve some of these things.
I think this is on the mind of a lot of people. So if I look at my family, a lot of people who are left-wing people. Like my mom, she was always a left-wing person who voted Greens. She demonstrated against the nuclear deployment of nuclear arms in our country.
Yeah.
And now she's basically saying, maybe I have to vote for Wilders because she's getting out of hand. So this just goes to show that, we're really deep in some deep shit. If even these left-wing people are beginning to say these things,
Yeah. It's either left-wing or apathetic people who just didn't really care or think about politics very much. People who just want to get on with their lives, normies, and so.
It's cognitive dissonance, basically.
Yeah, I think so. Because they're really just waking up very late to the show. And I don't think they're connecting the dots. Where people who think about any of these issues, whatever side they might be on, have been connecting the dots, at least retrospectively, for a decade plus, or maybe even longer. But they're just waking up. Here in Germany, there are a lot of normal people that are moving towards the AfD, this Alternative für Deutschland, this alternative for Germany, just because they see what's going on. And I think there's definitely a worrying element. I said in this recent talk I had with this guy that we're in an age now where politically, at least, I think anything is possible. I'm not saying that fascism will return to Europe, but I think it's a possibility. It could also not happen at all. It could be completely different. I'm just, I I feel like
Yeah, we're basically back in the 30s. We've got communists and we got communists and we got fascists. So this is basically what's happening. We got far left wing people, and we got far right wing people. And yeah, I think you have to pick a side. But it's like Hillary and Trump. They both don't want them, you know. But yeah, you have to pick a side. And this is what Wilders. I'm really resentful for voting for him, but I just don't see another choice, you know. And a lot of people.
Well, what don't you like about Wilders?
Well, I mean, basically, he's being funded by the Israelis. So this is one thing, and it's not about Israel. It's about he's being funded by a foreign power. I don't like that. So basically, he was very high in the polls, and he, like a few weeks ago, he just had his program, and it was just one page. His whole program was one page, and basically he said some things like close all mosques, all crazy stuff. I guess what did he say?
Yeah, he is very pro-Zionist. I know that he.
Yeah.
He's.
He said no more headscarves. Nobody can wear headscarves. All these things that I just think, this goes too far, man. What, you know, and a lot of people who wanted to vote for him, when they saw this, they just thought maybe it's not such a good idea, you know, because this is going too far. You know?
I don't know if it's going too far. It just sounds really simplistic to me. You know, okay,
exactly.
mosque. How are you going to do that? But yeah, I wasn't aware that he was directly funded by the Israelis. That's pretty concerning.
No, it's not. It's not a fact, you know, but we don't know. But
so it's basically sort of conspiracy. I know he's pro-Israel. He's very Zionist.
He's being funded by people like David Horowitz and these type of American.
Oh, I see. Right. Man, yeah. Well, doesn't surprise. Yeah, but I mean, what? I don't understand. Is there a reasonable alternative? Anyone who's willing to talk about some of these social, religious, cultural issues apart from Geert Wilders?
Well, so we had the Socialist Party. They were already talking about this in the 80s. They were talking about it in a different type of way, of course, but they were the first to come with this. But yeah, the Socialist Party, I mean, there's a lot of problems with them. And then we have, on the right, we have a lot of new parties. So some people who were formerly members of parliament for the PVV, who split off from Wilders' party and they started their own party, basically because they don't like Wilders' economic policies, because Wilders is basically a socialist with an anti-Islamic view, and they are right-wingers on economic issues. So they started a new party, for Nederland, so for the Netherlands, basically. And yeah, this is a new party, and I believe that in the coming elections, 65 parties are gonna enter the like 65 new parties or something like that.
Joram van Cleveren.
Joram van Cleveren, exactly. Yeah. And I don't know if you're familiar with the referendum about the Ukraine we had this year.
No.
No, so we had a referendum. It was a non-binding referendum about the association treaty with Ukraine. This was basically started by an alternative website called Geen Stijl. It's basically like it's anarchistic trolls. Basically, they are trolls, and they started this. If you could get, I believe, 300,000 autographs, then they had to start a referendum. So basically 60% voted against this referendum, basically because of the anti-EU sentiment. And the government just put it aside. You know, they just said, we don't care. You know. So this guy, one of these guys, is now the leader of this For Nederland party. So Joram van Cleveren is the one who split off, and he invited one of these guys who started this referendum. He's called Jan Roos, as to be the leader of the party. You know, so they, I believe they have in the polls two seats. But I think that a lot of people think they are gonna vote for Wilders because they're not gonna make it. You know, they think that if I'm gonna vote for Nederland, and they're not gonna get enough seats, yeah, then basically a loss for Wilders. No, this is basically a problem, you know.
I understand. Sounds like a really difficult choice. I mean, so if I were Dutch, I don't know what I'd do. It's just that you're right. There are a lot of parties like that in Europe. You know, a lot of them in different countries, very socialist leaning economically and all this other stuff, but they don't like Muslims. In the case of Wilders, it's a bunch of things. He's extremely pro-Israel. He's got socialist policies, and okay, he doesn't like Islam. I guess that's good, but yeah, I think, and this is the issue my friend from Limburg has with him as well, is that he doesn't have much else on his program. He just, you know, it's
a one-issue party, basically.
Yeah. I don't know how great that is to.
So for instance, what he does is that, like a few years ago, there was a poll, an internet poll about if the Flanders, so the Dutch-speaking part of Belgium, if they should come back to us, you know, if they should be joined with Holland. Mm. So about 70% said yes, and the next day Wilders just put this in his party program. So it's just basically populist. So if people, he just basically chooses these issues because he knows he's going to get votes with it, you know. He doesn't really think about it. It's more to get votes, you know. So this is, problematic. It's not really an, how you say? He doesn't stand for his principles, basically.
Yeah. Do you think? I mean, what do you think his actual prospects are for winning?
I think he's going to win. So in the polls, he has. I'm looking at it now. It's one poll. He has 28 seats. So and the VVD, so the Conservative Liberals, have 27. But he used to have 35 seats in the polls. And what I said is that there's a lot of people who are below the radar who are going to vote for him. You know. So for instance, I also answered this poll, and I never said I'm going to vote for Wilders, but I'm probably going to do it anyway. So, you know, so there's a lot of people like this. So we are lucky that on the left side of the spectrum we have a lot of political parties. They're really eating themselves. So this is a good thing because the party with the most seats can decide to form a government. So even if he gets only 30%, but he gets more than the other ones, he can decide to form the government. So basically the left wing and the right wing are pretty even, it's like split, but the right wing just has less parties, so more seats per one party.
I guess there's a real question then, from what I understand of Wilders, he's a very simplistic policy regarding, say, Islam. How would he go about this? I mean, yeah, I'd love for mosques to be banned, but I mean, I don't know. How's he going to do that?
Yeah, it will basically be a civil war. I mean, then you have to send the army in to close these mosques. Then you have to send the army in to take everyone's Quran because he wants to ban the Quran. I mean, how are you going to do this? People wearing headscarves, are you going to arrest them? Are you going to take them off? Are you going to?
Yeah.
Terrifying.
The problem, you know, I would imagine Wilders. I doubt people on the alt-right would support him because he's very Israeli, pro-Israel. It's a very polarizing figure, but it's looking, based on what you've told me, that he might actually win.
He's going to win. I think he's going to win. I mean, if there's going to happen something, if there's going to be a terroristic attack, he's going to win for sure. It's out in my mind. But the problem is that they're going to do a cordon sanitaire. I don't know if you know what this is. They did this in Belgium.
Wait, gotta get closer to the microphone. Can't hear you.
I'm sorry. So they're going to do a cordon sanitaire. So they did this in Belgium with Vlaams Belang. Yeah. So this basically means that all the parties are going to join up against Wilders and just so they're going to join up against Wilders, and he's out of power. So this would mean that we need a very broad coalition of all these parties to take him out of power, to keep him out of power.
But somebody still needs to address these issues of multiculturalism and Islam and the crime, get into a little bit. I mean, if it's not going to be him, then somebody else needs to do it.
Well, I guess that the VVD conservative liberals are the ones to do this, because they are the ones who are on his left side. If you get what I mean. So they can steal votes from him because they are more reasonable. They have more responsibility. They have more respect. So, and they are more moderate about this. So they have some hawks who are very against this Islam. But they are not as extreme as Wilders. So basically, our hope is with the conservative liberals. So, but yeah.
But I guess there's a bigger question. There always is. I mean, it doesn't seem to me at this point in time in late 2016 that any party anywhere is going to be able to return the Netherlands to the state it was, say, 20 years ago or 30 years ago.
It's not going to happen. No.
It's done. I mean, the country's forever changed. Talk about some of these crime statistics. I remember when I was doing some research for my discussion with my friend from Limburg. I mean, you look at the statistics, and unfortunately, there are a lot of the crimes committed there are by Moroccans and Algerians and Surinese from Suriname, and this seems to just be, I looked across all the violent crimes, and they just were well represented there. What do you think's going on there?
Well, basically, in our jails, we've got 60% are non-Western foreigners. So we distinguish between Western foreigners and non-Western foreigners. So we got 3.5 million foreigners, but half of them are Western foreigners. So that's somebody who has a German mom or a Belgian father, something like that.
Yeah.
They are considered foreigners as well. The non-Western foreigners, they are 12% of our population, and they are overly represented in all the crime statistics. So if you look at it from a relative point of view, so for every 10,000 people, it's 0.12% of the native white people and 0.44% of the Caribbeans. So they commit the most crimes. So this would mean that for every one Dutch person in jail who's a suspect, we have 24 Caribbeans, we have 12 Moroccans, and we have 12 Surinamese people. So they are overrepresented.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think people can just ignore this stuff. Whatever people think the ultimate cause is, there's clearly a problem with these populations.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even, you don't need statistics to see this. You can see it on the streets every day, So, especially with the young. So the girls are doing pretty well. But the guys, they are just on the streets smoking weed. This gangster culture I was talking about, and they are just. This also goes for our black population, who are relatively good integrated. But this before they were doing better, and now we have this gangster culture from America, and they are just being influenced by this. We even got like Black Lives Matter people in our country. Who are just how you say, just copying the guys in America.
Well, there's a certain kind of internationalism going on with the States. I hate, honestly, it's weird, because I was born in the States, but I don't. Increasingly, I feel very antagonistic towards the United States. I feel much more European, and we have to be honest. A lot of the problems that we're dealing with in Europe here, with the refugees, with the immigrants. This was American foreign policy. This was all these mistakes that were committed over and over and over in the Middle East. It's a fact that a lot of the destabilization that's taken place is due to American intervention and let's be honest, botching things up. And, unfortunately, we in Europe have to foot the bill. We're the ones having to deal with this shit. And it's not to say there's no immigration in the States, and they have their own issues. But I just feel... I feel like the United States has really left Europe in the lurch, which means that we're left on our own to deal with a problem that is only partially okay. There were issues of guest workers, but the destabilization of the Middle East was not entirely, but it was primarily an American intervention, American action, and I feel like Americans, of course, they're not responsible for foreign policy, and it's the politicians, but I really feel a kind of disconnect these days with the United States. Not just from a personal level. It's just that they don't understand what's going on in Europe, and they're being fed a lot of misinformation. I noticed when I talk to my mother, tell me about things from the New York Times, which I think is a terrible source of information.
Yeah.
And I just feel like the United States made all these mistakes in the Middle East, and now we have to deal with it. And
so I think that this is a correct view. So, but I would also like to stress that American culture is also the problem.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was about to say that. I think American culture has infected European culture to a very unhealthy degree.
So the whole European project is based on America, or the American project.
Oh, yeah. Well, yes and no. I think after World War II, there was definitely a motivation to try to reconcile people because of all the antagonism that had been around for centuries, you know.
Yeah, no, of course. But I mean more from a elitist point of view, or the media point of view, is that the elitists just want to create like this United States of Europe with a multicultural melting pot, just like in America, and where we all can travel from Amsterdam to Rome, like you can travel from New York to California or something like that. So this is the thing that, and this culture, I mean, if you look at our music videos, they're all American music videos. There's no Dutch. We have some Dutch videos, but it's all American. It's all in Hollywood and all this stuff, you know. So this is basically the Americanization of our culture. And
Absolutely.
I think that also, if I look at American media, they project a lot of their shit on Europe, so the race relations and all this stuff. They project their point of view on Europe.
I feel the same way. Yeah. And I resent it. I don't. So weird. I don't like. Increasingly, I don't like the United States, and I don't like the attitudes Americans have towards Europe. I mean,
they are still important for us, I guess.
Well, economically, but I just
defensive.
There's defense. I don't know. Europe is perfectly capable of taking care of itself, but of course, United States needs to stick its nose in everything, and I just feel that. Honestly, I mean, this is directed more to the government and politicians, but also the media in the United States. I really wish they would just shut the fuck up and mind their own business and let us Europeans do what we got to do and not. I mean, they have their own issues in the United States, and we have our own issues here, partly created by the United States, and. I mean, it's this giant mess. I don't really know.
If you look at this terrifies me about Hillary Clinton. So they, in the European media, they're very pro-Clinton. So they're very anti-Trump, and they make it seem as when Trump becomes president, we will start the Third World War. Well, I guess that the likelihood that the Third World War will be started by Hillary is much bigger. If you look at the alt-right speaks, how she talks about Vladimir Putin, it's just so crazy.
Well, I think we need a better relationship with Putin in general and Russia in general. I mean, the thing about globalism, and I think this is the big problem. I mean, people are always saying it's all George Soros or some shadowy, some one elite guy. But the concept of globalism is actually what it does is it rather than unites people, it fractures people. I mean, rather than Germany and the Netherlands and other places being able to have just a healthy relationship, say with Russia, we experience antagonism from Hillary Clinton and the American government. I mean, I get it. The United States had its time, but increasingly, the United States has just very little to do with Europe. There's not much connection there anymore. And I really wish that Americans would just stay the fuck out of our business. And I say that as someone who's American too, both American and European. We Europeans need to solve these issues on their own without American globalism or interference. Now, I realize some people would say, yeah, it's only Israel's influence. I don't think it's just Israel's influence with the American foreign policy. I think the United States has a huge ego and has, whether it's justified or not, because of its contributions in the 20th century. But, the instability in the Middle East, I mean, going back to, you could go really far back, but if you wanted to be conservative, The early 90s, the Saddam Hussein issue with the George Bush Sr.
I think the Islamic Revolution in Iran.
Well, yeah, I could have mentioned that, but then we have to go back to 1953. I mean, and that was also a British thing, Anglo-American oil.
Yeah, of course. But the British and the American, they are the same to me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The British are not really European. They don't consider themselves European. It's weird. They're sort of part of Europe, but they've never really felt part of Europe. They're just sort of the English or the British. I definitely feel more kinship with Dutch people and even German people than I do with British people, if I'm honest. But yeah, I mean, they are the one and the same.
I would like to say that I do feel a connection with American people. I'm not anti-American in that sense. I think there are a lot of good people, and they are the closest to us compared to the other civilizations.
That's true, and I mean, but
they are part of our civilization. You cannot deny this, and yeah, they are just so big and so powerful, and they have so many vested interests. They fuck things up for us, but yeah.
Well,
there's still some respect for. I still have respect for them.
The common American person is not responsible for Middle Eastern interventions and what have you. In fact, I doubt he could even locate the Netherlands on a map, but even in 2016, some guy in Indiana or whatever who's taking his dog for a walk. I mean, they're basically harmless people. They're ignorant, and they're not helpful, but they're not causing direct harm. But it's really the people journalists, media, politicians. I mean, most Americans might not even be able to locate Europe on a map, so it doesn't really. I don't see them as an issue, but it's unreasonable to expect Americans to be concerned with Europe. I think why would they be? It's not their country. When something happens in Europe, in the United States, on the other hand, everyone gets worked up. I mean, there's a kind of, I don't think it's a religion, but there's a kind of ritualization of 9/11, right?
Yeah.
As this event that the whole world has to pay attention to, and I get it.
It's so American-centric. This is what I was getting to when they are talking about the European politics. They are really projecting their own thing. So, for instance, an important difference is in America you're always talking about the race of the people. So, white people, African American, Asian. In Europe, at least in Holland, we talk about a country of origin. So. You can be a black guy from Morocco, but you're not being. They call you a Moroccan, not a black guy. So this is basically the difference. And when I see American media talking about Europe, I just like, wow, these people don't know what they are talking about. They're just talking about their own country and their own problems, and just projecting it on us. So.
Well, there's no doubt that the alt-right, say, as a manifestation, started in the United States, and this is one of my big criticisms of the alt-right is. This whole idea of white identity really falls apart in Europe if you just look at the history and the fact that it's still going on. Up until recently, as we pointed out, Dutch people didn't like Germans for obvious historical reasons. Ukraine and Russia, Hungarians and Romanians, I've seen them in my comment section, Hungarians and Romanians fight. It's just, there's no such thing as unified white identity in Europe. So if that ever works, let's say they create a white ethno-state like their dream, that's going to be an American thing. I don't see, and part of that's just English, right? You have a unified language to unite people. That doesn't exist in Europe. There's so many different languages, and people want to preserve them, understandably. So I think the alt-right in Europe is kind of a pipe dream. I think you could get something like an alt-right dream in the United States, but in Europe you'd probably just get individual populist or fascist regimes in countries. Like in Hungary, people will disagree. I think they're sort of neo-fascist, Jobbik. They're a party that has really weird ideas on occasion, like putting gay people in prison. At least some people have advocated that. Counting the number of Jews in government. They believe in some weird paganism thing called Turism. Not all of them, obviously. It's just, stuff like that. But that's a very Hungarian thing, and then there's
this would not go in Holland. People.
No. Well, this thing this thing about Hungarians. I mean, I hate to say it, but I think a lot of Hungarians are really backwater, and this is why I feel culturally much more Western European. I mean, I like the Conservative Party in Hungary, but this weird sort of neo-fascist thing, and it just doesn't sit well with me. And but it's just Eastern Europe or Central, non-Western Europe in general. There's a different history, and actually one of the reasons. I mean, there's this joke, or it's not a joke, but what do the alt-right say? The Eastern Europeans aren't cucked, right? That's because of the history, communism and dealing with a lot of adversity. The countries are poor. It's understandable that they would gravitate to certain weird parties sometimes. But in Western Europe, you've had such a good deal for decades and decades, and I'm pretty sure it was the same in Holland and Germany. People who are retired now used to talk about the company job they had for 30 or 40 years and blah, blah, blah. They had this sort of utopic.
Yeah, the Eastern Europeans value their freedom more, I guess, because they still have these memories of the Soviet Union and stuff.
I'm not sure if your Eastern Europeans value their freedom. My impression more is that they're just more paranoid, understandably, and also more cautious. I mean, like
I mean the national freedom, not the
right. Yeah, possibly, yeah. But I mean, once again, you need to be cautious there. I mean, most people, there are some people who like fascism, but there's always some risk there, I think, of creating a really difficult situation because people become so paranoid and fearful. And in Germany, in the AfD, I don't know, they seem pretty reasonable. I would support them, I guess. But I think one of the real ways forward, if there is any, is a kind of dissolution of the EU. I think if we could get rid of the EU, then countries could sort of do what they want. Now, you still have American influence and international influence and criticism and people telling European countries what to do. But at the same time, it's possible that people might be able to mobilize and institute their own policies. Switzerland is doing that now. In Hungary, they had a referendum, not a big turnout, but people voted against the whole EU quota thing. And what are they going to do? Are they going to excommunicate Hungary from the EU? Well, maybe. And if they do, then it's not that big a deal. So I think if Western Europe had more of a backbone and a spine, they could do a lot. But it's not going to happen in Germany. I know that for a long time. It'll have to be other Western European countries that do it, and of course Britain not really being part of Europe, they might be with Brexit, like with Brexit, the forerunners. They might be the ones who really just sort of push the envelope. But
I welcome this. About the European Union, I used to be a federalist, back in the days, but now I just think that the people who are in charge in the European Union, they are just so out of touch with
reality. They're globalists. They don't care about things going on.
They are out of touch with the people in the streets. So they think that because they travel around Europe, that everybody does this, and that they are cosmopolitans. Everybody is like this. Most normal people don't even go farther than maybe 50 kilometers from where they live.
True. That's true.
So it's just an elitist type of way of looking at things, So, the European Union also. This is also with Wilders. So he was in a government with the conservative liberals, and they always make like a pact. So they make a coalition pact. You know what it is? So they say, okay, I give you this issue, and then I can get this issue. So he got the immigration. So stricter immigration issue. So he would give the conservative liberals some things for that, for his support. The immigration minister went around Europe to try to get this deal, and it's just impossible because the European Union just won't allow it. So this is why he actually walked away from the government, and the government fell because the European Union is just blocking these tighter immigration laws, So. Yeah. And this is a big problem because this is a sovereignty problem. I mean, we need to decide what to do in a country. These people in Brussels cannot decide this for us, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and look, I think if there were a kind of popular uprising in most Western European countries, it would be undeniable. They can't, technically, the EU can't just, in a form of tyranny, say, well, you're going to do what we want you to do. If people start caring and there are numbers that are sufficient, then there definitely could be some serious changes, I think.
Yeah, well, it's important that they don't get their army, because if they get their army, we're fucked. Because then we are not armed. We don't have guns like in America. If they would even help, but if they get their army, yeah, then we're fucked. It's basically the nation states in Europe, they're not done for. So this is basically we have to fight.
So you think it's going to be violence then?
I don't think there's another choice.
So,
these people are, these people in Europe, these Europhiles. I'm not saying that we should be violent, but I think that they are going to be violent.
Oh,
so these people in Europe, they are so foreign. Also, of course, they fail their jobs. You know, it's a very lucrative thing to be in Brussels.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess this is the problem. Yeah, elites.
Well, that's always the problem. I mean, people make fun of Alex Jones and whatever, but honestly, I think he's more accurate in, people are always trying to name specific figures like George Soros or it's all the Jews or whatever, but at the end of the day, it's a bunch of people who have a certain mentality about how the world should be run, and they come from...
nobody is in control, but they are very... They all
they're
have
influential, and they're different.
They all have the same interests.
Yeah, I would say they're all sort of part of the Hydra, and they have different heads, and... globalism is a real thing. I can't help but think that it was almost inevitable to some degree because of the internet. I mean, the internet basically, there are no borders in the internet, right? There are no nations. People just they talk and they converse. We're talking. Things change. I mean, I don't know if it was actually avoidable, and I'm a bit skeptical about the idea of Europeans being able to sort of, even for their own countries, band together and fight this stuff, because I can't help it. I can't see a really positive future in Europe, and I think even in Eastern Europe, I think things will get bad. I think there might not be Muslims there or immigrants, mass immigration, but through fear, populist fascist parties might come to power, and then it won't be that nice there either. Because one thing that's important to me is freedom of speech and expression and whatever. And fascists don't really like people speaking their mind, especially if it's not in agreement with what they have to say. So.
Yeah, I think also, of course, we're seeing this pushback against globalism. And it's kind of ironic that anti-globalism is gaining global traction as well. So, I mean, if you look at people in America and people in Europe, they basically all see the same thing. If you look at this whole pushback against the social justice warriors, against globalism, it's a broad coalition of people with different views, from alt-right to classical liberals, or libertarians.
Yeah.
We basically all agree on one thing, that these people need to go, and these ideas.
Cataline, I might point out another thing, is that the old national hostilities from centuries ago. It seems that despite the fact that people in Europe are saying we want our own country, Danish or Dutch or German, I don't see people I don't see Germany saying, and the Polish, we need to do something to them. It seems to be people are your individual European countries. They might not be allies, but they're sort of respectful of each other.
Yeah, exactly. Brothers and sisters, but we
I don't know if that go that far, but they're certainly maybe like second cousins.
Or neighbors. I mean,
neighbors. Yeah.
We are tribal species. We need fences, and this is just. Every day you look on the news, it just confirms this. That we are tribal people, and you cannot take this out of us. So you just need to be realistic about it and just say, okay, you have your strip of land, we have our strip of land. We can trade with each other. We don't have to fight over land. We can trade, and let's just be friends or companions or whatever, but there don't have to be any war anymore. It's just dumb. I mean, I don't. Why would we? For some strip of land, it's dumb.
Well, I'd hope that Europeans have learned their lesson in that regard, but I mean, Western Europeans at least. It's just, obviously the multiculturalism and the Islam issue is going to keep on happening. And look, it's been a couple of months since the last Muslim terrorist attack, so I guess sometime before the end of the year there'll be a nice big one.
Yeah, well, the one in Brussels was actually meant for our country. I don't know.
Okay.
So they actually want to blow up, I think, gas Schiphol. And of course, because the police was after them, I think they just were panicked and they said, let's do it here. So it's kind of crazy. And yeah, we haven't had a big terroristic attack, luckily, but yeah, I think it's going to be inevitable.
Matter of time, yeah. I think it'll hit the Netherlands. I don't think they're going to bother in Eastern Europe. There's no political gain to be had there, and it would be bad. But Netherlands, Germany, France, UK, Scandinavia.
Yeah, so I think the most scary thing is that this whole gangster culture with the Mokro Mafia, so the Moroccan Mafia, they've got heavy firepower. So we've got shootings with AK-47s in Amsterdam, liquid assassinations within a criminal. Yeah, people. One car got just basically shot at with like maybe like a few AK-47s. The people in the guy, they're all drug dealers, of course. They're killing each other. But my point out is that these people, when you have one of these criminals who's on a redemption trip, he wants to redeem himself by becoming a martyr. He has the firepower. He has the firepower to do this. He has AK-47. They have hand grenades, all this stuff. They have.
Did this sort of thing exist 25 years ago in the Netherlands? I don't think so.
We had mafia, of course, but they were Dutch mafia. But now we've seen the rise of the Mokro Mafia, as we call them, and they are relentless. They just shoot in front of primary schools. Somebody got liquidated with an AK-47 in the day. Yeah, and the kids were just on the playing field, and they just shoot this guy 10 meters away from the kids. So yeah, these people don't care, man. They don't care. So it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, the problem I think is just that there's no way to be realistic and be optimistic about any of this.
No.
On a final note, because time is drawing to a close, but
yes,
it seems interesting that another import that I can't stand from the United States is SJWism. I mean, that's an American thing that came to Europe, pretty much.
I guess that in my country, the only thing we really have with this SJW is we also have an SJW party. I don't know if you heard about Genk. This is basically a party of Dutch Turkish people, probably funded by Erdogan. But this guy is a very smart guy, and he tries to involve the black community in his party. So he has some SJWs who joined his party actually. So I don't know if you're familiar with the Black Pete thing, the whole Black Pete controversy. You know what it is?
No.
So we have Sinterklaas, so Saint Nicholas, and he has helpers. They are called Black Peaks, and they are basically white people with blackened faces. Mm. So this goes back like a few hundred years ago. This is basically a children's party, like Christmas, and these black pigs are our culture. And now the black community says, the SJW say, yeah, well, this is racist, and you need to get rid of it. This is a cultural thing for maybe 150 years, but because they blacken their faces, it is racist, so we need to get rid of it. So these people join with this Islamist party, and this is what also is so dangerous, is the left and the Islamists are joining forces. And this is the whole social justice warrior movement is joining up with Islamists.
Yeah, well, we've seen this in other countries. It's strange. I don't think they'd be allies forever. if the Islamists ever took over, the SJWs would be, convert or die. So.
Well, we have seen this in the Iranian Revolution, of course, with the communists and the Islamists joining up together. And when the Shah was gone, they basically executed all the leftists. So yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't bode well for the future, but. Yeah, so I mean, I'm trying to remind me, when exactly is the Dutch election taking place again?
15 March 2017.
15 March, yeah. So about half a year, maybe a little longer.
Yeah.
A lot could happen in that. I mean, we know. I mean, look, if there were a big bomb that went off in the center of Amsterdam, everything could change, right?
Wilders is going to win big.
Well, if that happened, sure, but.
And I think also with Trump presidency. And we also have, I believe, elections in France and some other countries.
Yes.
So,
yes.
2017 is going to be a very interesting year.
Yeah, I think so. I just hope. Well, I don't know. I don't. It seems that everything's going to end in violence and chaos. It's hard to be optimistic, but.
Well, I hope not, but yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. Well, I mean. Final note: where do you see organizations like Erkenbrand? Do you think that they'll ever gain any traction in the mainstream, or?
No, I don't think so. We've seen the opposition against Wilders and alt-right now. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
Interesting. Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining me, Cataline. I think it was a very different perspective from the previous Dutchman. I mean, Limburg and North Holland, very different places, and you're obviously more politically involved. Yeah, I think may we live in interesting times, or maybe I should say, may we not live in interesting times. I hope things go better for Holland. Yeah, I'm always meaning to get around to properly study Dutch, but I never did. The Dutch I know.
It's a very difficult language, so for Dutch people.
It's not difficult. I don't think. It's just I don't invest the time. And the Dutch I do know. I just sort of taught myself. Dat heb ik mij zelf aangeleerd, but it's just I don't know. If I were to live there, I'd do.
Yeah, I guess so.
But anyway, thank you for being here.
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
Appreciate the information, and I think the audience will be interested to hear what's going on in the Netherlands, especially the Dutch people. We do have Dutch people in my subscriber base, so very nice of you to join us. And yeah, if there's anything in the future, I think going on in the Netherlands, you might be the person to talk to.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Goed zijn. Yeah. Anyway. I will be leaving you guys and seeing you later. And once again, thanks to my guests, Cataline, and enjoy the rest of your week. Bye-bye. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.